We're now on the bottom of Daf Tezayin Omid Aleph. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer HaMizbeach Memutza V'Yomid B'Yem Tazora. The Mizbeach was situated midway in the Azara. In other words, the width of the Mizbeach going from north to south was Shloshim Ushtayim Amos Hayalo. It was 32 Amos. Now we're going to take this number 32 and we're going to break it down into its component parts. And we're now on the top of Daf Tezayin Amud Beis. So again, we're going from north to south, and the Mizbeach has a width of 32 amos. Eser amos keneged pischo shel heichal. So the Pesach of the heichal was 10 amos wide, and the middle section of the Mizbeach would be directly opposite this Pesach Shel Heichal. That took up 10 amos. Now we said that the Mizbeach was 32 amos, so we're left with 22 amos. Achadesrei amos letzofon, v'achadesrei amos ledoro. So we have 11 amos on the northern side, to the north of the Pesach Heichal, and another 11 amos to the south of the Pesach Heichal. Nimtza Mizbeach mechuvan keneged Heichal v'koslav. So the opening to the Heichal was keneged the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach was keneged the opening to the Heichal. So therefore, says Rav Adabar Ava, we can therefore interpret our Mishnah in Midos in light of the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that since Rabbi Yehuda situated the Mizbeach in such a way that it was Keneged Pesach HaHeichal, and given the height from the Shara Mizrach all the way to the top of the Mizbeach, we said it was almost 23 amos, there was no way you could see the Pesach HaHeichal looking from east to west when you're standing on the Har Mishcha burning the, doing the Azah of the Dam HaPorah. So therefore, we don't have to interpret the Mishnayos in Midos and attribute them to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, as Rav Kana did before, as Rav Huna did before. Rav Huna. But rather, says Rav Bar Ava, we can attribute the Mishnayos in Midos to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. And it's the Mizbeach that blocked the view of the opening to the Heichal, and therefore we understand that there's a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda. And now the Gemara rejects this whole thesis about Rabbi Yehuda. It's impossible, says the Gemara, it's untenable to interpret that the Mishnayos in Midos were authored by Rabbi Yehuda. Isal Kedaitach Midos, Masechet Midos. Rabbi Yehuda reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Mizbeach be'emtza azor mi mishkachasle. If we study Masechet Midos carefully, we will see clearly that the Mizbeach was not situated in the middle of the Azorah. That the Mishnayos in Midos reject the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Vasnan, and now we're going to study a Mishnah in Midos in order to prove that the Mizbeach was not situated in the middle of the Azorah. The Mishnah says, Kol Hazara Haisa Orech Mea Ushmonim V'Shem Al Rochav Mea Ushloshim V'Chamesh. I have a little bit of a diagram here in the Mesifta, but basically what the Mishnah is telling us is that the Azara was 187 amos in length and 135 amos in width. And this includes what we call the Ezras Yisrael, the Ezras Kohanim, not the Ezras Noshim. Al Rochav Meu Shloshim V'Chamesh. Now, then it says that Mina Mizrach L'Mayrov, Mea Ushmonim V'Sheva. So if you're looking at the length from east to west, so you're going into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Azorah on the east. And by the way, the Shar that entered in on the east to the Azorah was called Shar Nicanor. And you're moving east to west, and the Kedusha is getting more and more intense. And we're talking about an area that measured 187 amos. Now let's break down that number 187 amos into its various component parts. Makom Drisas, Ragle Yisrael, Achatasrei Amma. So we said that there was an area called the Ezras Yisrael, where Jewish people were allowed to enter there. And that was fine. I mean, if we wanted to go to the Ezras Kohanim, then they have to add a specific matir, let's say, for the sake of the korban. So this area, which we call the Ezras Yisrael, was 11 amos. Makom Drisas Raglei HaKohanim. Now we're entering into the Ezras Kohanim, where the Israelim were not generally allowed to enter. The Kohanim were there to do the avodah, and that's Achadis Reyam. That's another 11 amos. The Mizbeach itself took up an area of Shloshim Ushtayim amos, of 32 amos. Now we go westward, Bein Ulam LeMizbeach. We're going from the Mizbeach all the way to the Ulam Esrim Ushtayim amos, another 22 amos. The Heichal itself is 100 amos. Now that's, when we say the Heichal itself, we're talking about the Ulam, the Heichal, and the Kodesh Kadoshim. That's all told 100 amos. And Achadesrei Amma, of which 11 amos were Achorei Beis HaKapores, were behind the Kapores, which means the Kodesh Kadoshim. So this is the layout of the Beis Hamikdash, beginning with the Azorah, what we call the Ezras Kohanim, going from east to west. Now the Mishnah is going to analyze the layout of the Mikdash, of the Azorah, going from south to north. And then we'll see exactly where the Mizbeach was located. Min Adoram Litzafon, Mea Ushloshim V'Chamesh. So we have 135 amos going from south to north. Hakevesh v'Mizbeach Shishim Ushtayim. So we have 62 amos for the Kevesh and the Mizbeach. And now, if we add up all these numbers, we get to 64 amos. Just 1 second. 60, Shishim Ushtayim. So again, if we talk about the Mizbeach and the Kevesh, so that came to, 1 second. It says here 62 amos. Min Mizbeach v'letabash 8 amos. right? There was an area where they shechted the karbonos that was 8 amos, and then mokom hatabas esrim v'arba. So they had the tabos. He says here that they needed areas to do the hafshata and the hadacha of the karbonos, and that area was 24 amma, and minat tabos l'shulchanos 4 amos, minat shulchanos linanosim arba, another 4 amos, and these were the nanosim were the places that they had like pillars coming up of wood with hooks on them, and that's where they put the karbonos. V'nanosim l'kosel azara shmona amos, another 8 amos until the kosel. V'amosar, and what we're left with from the 135 amos is the area bein hakevesh v'la kosel u'makom hananosim. So let's see if we can sort of like get an overview. Again, we need to go through all these diagrams here, but that's the trouble with these diagrams is that they're 2-dimensional, they're not 3-dimensional. We needed something more complicated. In any event, the Mishnah has 62 amos for the Mizbeach and the Kevech, 8 amos between the Mizbeach and the Tabos, 24 amos for the Tabos themselves, 4 amos from the Tabos to the Shulchanos, 4 amos between the Shulchanos and the Nanosim, 8 amos between the Nanosim and the Kosel Hatzfoni, totaling 110 amos. Now, if we add the tables, which we said were at least 4 amos, then we get 114 amos, and we have from the original 135 amma width, we have another 21 amos to be accounted for. Now, the Mishnah says that the remainder to be allocated to the space between the Darom and the Kevesh and the space of the Nanosim. It doesn't specify exactly how much to allocate, but it seems that it would be 10 and a half amos, half of the 21 amos, and that was between the southern wall and the Kevesh. Another 10 and a half amos were occupied by the Nanosim. The Isal Kedaitach Midos, if you're going to tell me Masechet Midos should be attributed to Rabbi Yehudi, is Mizbeach Be'emtza Zora Mimish Kachasle. It's impossible to find that the Mizbeach was in the middle of the Azara, like Rabbi Yehuda, opposite the entrance to the Heichal. Why? Haruba the Mizbeach Badarom Koi. In fact, most of the Mizbeach was situated, according to the Mishnayos and Midos, on the southern side. In other words, since the Azara was 135 amos wide, if you divide it in half, half of 135 is 67 and a half. Now, the distance from the Kosel Hatzfoni to the Mizbeach was 62 and a half amos. So there's only 5 amos of the Mizbeach that stood on the half of the Azara that's on the north. In other words, 27 amos were on the southern half of the Azara. And that's against Rabbi Yehuda, who has the Mizbeach centered in the middle of the Azara. Now, again, we've proven that this Mishnah and perhaps other Mishnayos in Masechet Midos cannot possibly reflect the Shita Rabbi Yehuda. But Rashi is bothered by the following. Since the Mizbeach extended 5 amas to the north, meaning the northern half of the Chotze, of the Azara, then l'chora, it would have obstructed the view of the Hechal through the Shar HaMizrachi, even if we don't agree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In other words, if the Hechal, the Pesach Hechal, was 10 amos wide, and it was situated in the middle of the Chut of the Azara, and there's 5 amos south of the midpoint, 5 amos and 5 amos to the north. So therefore, even though the Mizbech was not centered, it definitely stood directly in front of the Hechal. So a Kohen who's looking through the Shara Mizrachi, his view of the Hechal would be blocked by the Mizbech. So you'd have to lower the Shara Mizrachi to enable the Kohen to see over the Mizbech into the Hechal. So Rashi asks, where's the proof that the Mishnah that requires lowering the Shara Mizrach would follow the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Because if you remember, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was the one who added an extra amma of height at the Ezras Kohanim. Meaning, although again you've proven that the Mishnayos in Midos cannot be reconciled with Rabbi Yehuda, but nevertheless you still don't have any proof that the Mishnayos in Midos reflect Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Because the entire proof that the Mishnayos reflect Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was predicated on the argument that because of the extra step, the view of the Pesach HaHechal was blocked, but that's not true. Because even if I reject Rabbi Yehuda, the Mishnayos in Masechet Midos would still maintain that the view of to the Hechal, the Pesach Hechal, was blocked by the Mizbeach, at least on that side of the Mizbeach. Even if the Mizbeach, again, was not in the center, but nevertheless, the Mizbeach would still block the view of the Kohen HaSorifes HaPorah. This is the Kash of Rashi. Now, to try to understand Rashi's answer to this question, I'm going to read to you. If we only have about 5 minutes left, I'll just try to fit in the note over here in the English translation. He says Rashi answers that according to the Mishnah that we're studying, the Mizbeach did not obstruct the view of the Hechal, of the Pesach HaHechal. Although it's true that the Mizbeach was 32 amos square, that was its dimension only at the Yesod HaMizbeach. Now, the Yesod HaMizbeach was 1 amma high, whereas the Mizbeach itself was indented into the Yesod on all sides. And if that be the case, then the actual square of the Mizbeach, if you go above the Yesod, was only 30 amos square. Now, the height of 6 amos from the ground, at that point, the Mizbeach had another indentation, which is called the Sovev. And that's where the Kohen walked around the Mizbeach. So that's at a height of 6 amos from the ground. If that be the case, then when you get to the highest part of the Mizbeach, let's say at 10 amos high, then the square of the Mizbeach is only 28 amos. And the part that protruded only 3 amos on the northern side of the Azara. And if we don't agree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, then the Kohen would be able to see the Heichal by looking over the Sovev. Again, if we don't follow Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rashi argues, then since the Yesod HaMizbeach, the base of the Mizbeach, stood 13 and a half amos above the ground level as you entered in on the eastern side of the Harabayas, now add that to that 6 amos of the height from the Sovev, and now you have 19 and a half amos of a view. And if the Pesach HaHeichal was 20 amos high, then you have the extra half an amma, and therefore you can get a view of the Pesach HaHeichal from the Shara Mizrach. Now this is only relevant to the northernmost 2 amos of the Heichal. The remainder was obstructed by the middle part of the Mizbeach, which was 9 amos high, but it doesn't matter. Once on the northern side, you can get a view of the Pesach HaHeichal, then you have an unobstructed view. So we're going to have to justify the Mishnah in Midos that lowers the Shara Mizrach by introducing the Shita Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, because according to him, the Yesod of the Mizbeach was actually 14 and a half amos above the ground level entering into the Arabayas, because the Ezras Kohanim was elevated by 1 extra amma. So if the base of the Heichal was elevated another 6 amos, then the floor of the Heichal was 20 and a half amos above the Harabayas. So the Heichal now could not be seen through the Shar Mizrach. And that's regardless of whether or not the Mizbeach was positioned midway or it wasn't in the middle of the Azara. And again, there's going to be a Tosfos, a Ritva, Tosfos Yontif. Everybody tries to analyze this Rash. But just to turn to Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph and finish up here, Elo Lav Shmamina Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, we can only justify the Mishnah in Midos having to lower the Shara Mizrachi to facilitate the vision of the Heichal, the Pesach Heichal by the Kohen Hasorif es Apara Mazes es Damapara. If we introduce Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Shmamina, and therefore we could learn that the Mishnayos and Midos are a liba, reflect the shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, which is exactly what we said here in the name of Rav Huna. Okay, then, so this is where we're going to stop for today. Mirz Hashem, tomorrow we'll do Daf Yud Zayin, and I wish you a great day.
Oh, have a good day.
Thank you.